Everyone. As you know, at the Product Recruiter, we spend a lot of time working with startup founders, many of whom are first-time founders. And when we meet them, it's often when they've reached the point in their business where they're ready to hire their first product manager. And that journey to hiring the first is often a very daunting task and often very complicated. So I've known Walid for many years and thought that his experiences would really be very helpful to any first-time founder who's trying to figure out what that human being looks like and how a founding PM or a first PM can add value to a business, and to also unlock what someone may not realize if they work for a very successful tech company today, but desire to work for a founder in a startup. So I want to let Walid make the introduction of tell us about your background, Walid. Tell us what you do, what you're solving for, what you're building, and what has you excited right now.
Hi, Heidi. Thank you for having me. And looking forward to our chat. I'm a senior AI product and growth leader that had been building B2B AI products in highly regulated industries like financial services and legal. I spent 15 years building products, starting from being a founding engineer, then moved up to management consulting, Big Four, then coming back to the startup world where I built product organization and design organization for high growth startups. Most recently, I'm leading the product at Alexi, where I was hired as the first PM building the product and design organization. At Alexi, we build AI automation for law firms. Think of it as Claude meets Zapier. So we help lawyers automate their legal research, document analysis, and other complex tasks. What excites me is that AI is breaking stereotypes, and nowhere is that more true than with lawyers. Everyone assumes lawyers are risk averse, they're late adopters to technology, but the reality is that it is totally different. You see lawyers building their own AI apps. They're like vibe coding solutions. They're adapting their business model as fast as the technology is evolving. And I'm excited to building an AI product that is enabling these law firms and lawyers to transform and thrive.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I want to learn more. So give us a bit of the backstory to what was happening at Alexi when they hired you as their first PM.
So before they hired me, Alexi had a product in legal research and it just hit product market fit. Mark, he's the CEO and co-founder at Alexi. He closed Series A. The team was growing. There's a new board that was formed. And then with all of that, there's just higher expectations. And then the conversations has shifted from like that this product work to where do we expand and how can we scale the business. And then this is the unique challenge with AI products, that product market fit also is not static. As you know, like the models keeps evolving. So you always have to continuously refine that product market fit as the technology and the models becomes better. So on top of that, also being a company that just hit Series A, the GTM motion or the primary acquisition channel was not yet nailed down. So I was walking into a situation where I needed to rebuild a product because the technology keeps evolving, models getting better. I needed to figure it out how to scale the product and then do all of that as the technology is accelerating faster than the ability of the organization at the time was able to adapt. So it's a typical post-Series A moment where the company has done a fantastic job proving that a product works, but now it has to figure it out how it can take it to market and then scale and expand it.
Sometimes a founder will have a vision around this particular role, and they think that this person's going to come in and focus on these areas or achieve these solve the problems or realize these specific opportunities. And then there's a disconnect when the PM actually joins and realizes what actually needs to happen. Can you talk a little bit about that? Did you experience any kind of sort of the fantasy versus the reality to be able to be successful in that role?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily describe it as like fantasy versus reality. I would describe it in terms of like the scope of what the founder was like thinking about, or the problems that they were thinking about at the time of wanting to hire a product leader or someone to lead the product, versus what the business needs more on in order to scale and more on a long term. And I think this is like different horizon thinking. So that's what I would describe it as. So Alexi, when I was had a conversation with Mark, Alexi had that legal research product, but as the models evolved, Mark needed to ship that second version that is based on the more advanced LLM models. So and then also Mark had a vision that needed to like scale the business quite rapidly. So Mark wanted someone who has the judgment, has experience that scale the product, took companies, startups from Series A to B to C. But the challenge is that when I landed and then dig deeper into the landscape and understanding what's going on, is that I needed to build an organization that can stay relevant, and also the foundation for a GTM that can scale quite rapidly as the product evolve, as we're building the product. So that meant really changing, not only deliver on this second version of the product, but also changing how the organization is operating. So we needed to move to faster decision making. We need to have tighter decision loops, and then feedback loops between the product, the marketing, and sales, because those are all also functions that you start building and then growing as a post Series A company. And then we need to continue to stay closer to the customers. And the product is started to become a system of interconnected elements that you as a product leader going in, you have to keep in mind. It's not just about fixing one thing. It's really about thinking at it as an interconnected system. So Mark hired me to execute on a specific roadmap, and I think this is what he needed at that moment. But the reality is that the business was evolving so quickly that I needed to go in, understand the different elements of it, and then build an organization that can keep up with the pace of how fast AI, the market, the competition, and also taking the product to market so that the revenue can scale faster.
Relationship between a founder and their first product person is paramount to the business. Talk a little bit about what many first-time founders might not realize is needed in that relationship between a first PM and that founder CEO.
This is an interesting question. I do think that founders, they don't realize when they're hiring that first PM or product leader, they think that the relationship is just, I want to hire someone to own the product, but I think it's more nuanced on that. I think there is and here's the unique challenge, right? Like the founder have built the first version, they built the product, they invested in building it and bring it to life. By the time someone joins to take over or to lead the product, it becomes a bit there's like that tension that exists between the founder and the product, because the founder need to delegate that responsibility, need to trust someone else in speaking to that vision, and then that's the tension that exists in that relationship, and then this is where the founders need to learn how to let go, because that transition is hard, more than they expect and more than they anticipate. For example, like Mark, for example, would catch himself jumping into product decisions because that's what he used to. That's what he's been into, operating in that mode. Not because he didn't trust me, but because he's been in this role for so long. So we had to work on this actively on that transition. I had to be in a lot of meeting with him in person, and then be able to understand his way of thinking, dig deeper into his original vision of the product, and see how I can carry that vision forward to earn the trust. And I think that the relationship only works if there are three things that exist. One, there need to be an explicit conversation about the decision rights, what the scope that the product leader, the first PM, is going to be taking on. That should be framed around objectives. Two, the founder need to back up that first PM publicly, even if they disagree privately on maybe the specifics of that decision. If that happens, that's okay. Then talk about what is different or what do you disagree about, but then commit right in front of the team, commit in front of the organization. And three, the founder needs to recognize that this is emotionally hard. Like, you're letting go something that you build, you invested so much into it, and then that's not going to be perfect. There's going to be moments where there's going to be missteps or a little attention, and then that's okay to work these through. And then the founder cannot do these things, or maybe it's too hard. Maybe they're not ready to hire a first PM.
That's a great question to ask oneself. Last question for us. What advice do you have for first-time founders who are on this journey and starting to think about hiring their first PM?
I heard from a lot of founders that they're getting pressure from, let's say, the board or from advisors that they need a PM or they need to hire a product leader. But then I asked them the question, like, what is that specific problem they're trying to solve? And sometimes they can articulate it, but a lot of times they can't. And then I ask is like, what is this metric? Like, if that person delivers, right, what should change in the business? What do you want to see as improving? But also, again, if there's no answer and it's lack of clarity, that tells me that maybe they're not ready. Maybe they need time to think through what are the parts of the business that they need that leader, the first PM, to help them work through. And when they start actually looking for a product leader or first PM, I think there are three things that are as important as the experience and the skills. I think that trust, chemistry, and passion are super important. The first one, can you trust them? Can you trust that they can carry through that vision? They can carry through that customer voice that you, as a founder, you deeply care about. Will they make decisions when you're not around that are the right decision? And that's trust, and that is super critical. Chemistry, working in the startups is hard. It's challenging, long hours. So you're going to be in the trenches together. So you're tackling hard problems. You're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. You're going to have to deal with adversity together. So you have to be genuinely like each other, and then share some sort of values. That if not, the relationship would break down fast. So don't rush into hiring someone just because they meet the checkbox. For example, I spent a lot of time with Mark just talking about like experiences where it really changed his character. We talked about hard, difficult decisions, and then got to share those moments. And then that tells me that gave me a peek into who he is as a person. And then for me is like, I knew that this is the kind of person I want to work during hard and good times and hard times. The last one is the passion, right? You cannot fake it. The person you want to bring in need to have that deep curiosity about your space, the customers, the market. It's going to take a lot of time, like to understand that space, what makes the product work. You need to have someone that genuinely is excited about the problem. And then once you hire them, let them lead, have explicit conversation going back to the decisions, rights, the scope, the responsibility, and give them air cover. And then they're not going to get things right for sure, but give them the air cover when they make these tough calls. And then share the context proactively. There's a lot of background that happened to that point that is never been recorded. So be proactive in sharing that. And then also, if you're not ready to let go these product decisions, or maybe you cannot, you don't share that passion, they don't share the passion, maybe you're not don't hire yet, right? Like there's always that option of not hiring.
Thank you for your insights that I have no doubt will be helpful and beneficial for a founder or someone who sort of is thinking about what it might be like to work for a founder, because it's a bit of a romance if you've never done it before, but it's clearly, as you've shared, there's a lot of complexity and nuance to being the first person in partnership with a founder. For anyone who is interested in connecting, we're going to include Walid's contact information, his LinkedIn profile below. And if you're curious about the services that we provide at the Product Recruiter, they're of course going to be included as well. And include your comments. We'd love to hear what you thought of this session. Have a great day, everyone. And thank you again, Walid.
Thank you, Heidi. Appreciate it.